last night at 6 o'clock, someone said, hey, did you want to come over tomorrow and give a presentation at the iOS meetup? So I didn't have a lot of time to prepare, but I wanted to give you guys a quick overview about what Perfect is. And in a couple of minutes, I'm going to tell you a story. Now, what's interesting is I used to be a developer. I was a developer for 10 years. I started to get so much work that I didn't have the time to do it, so I started hiring other people to do it, and I started managing other people, and suddenly I wasn't developing anymore. So I don't get to do any development myself anymore, which is unfair because development is my favorite thing to do. I want to start off with an idea, though, and the idea, as you know now, is that you guys build for iOS, and you know that if you're trying to communicate with a server today, there's a lot of problems in that. There's a lot of back-end server, different ways you can integrate with a server. There are also, of course, many front-end mobile versions, so now you have multiple languages and things that you've got to deal with. As you also know, something big happened last year in that Apple open-sourced Swift, or declared that they were going to open source. It's a big thing. I want to tell you a quick little story. This is a story that we're part of, and you guys are all part of as of today. A long time ago, a little company started called Apple before I was born. Is anybody in this room alive at that point? And then something changed. There was a guy named John Scully, who was the Pepsi-Cola CEO, who joined Apple. You guys probably know this. And he was actually the CEO when the original Mac was introduced. And you guys have all seen the movie, and you know Jobs left. There's a big fight. Different movies display it different as to whether they were fighting or not. And of course, John Scully, fast forward a little bit, put out and started to build software. And the idea is that this is what I wasn't there, I wasn't in his brain, but I think this is what happened. Is that he was the Pepsi-Cola guy, right? So he thought, well, I love the idea of having two giant companies, Coke and Pepsi, and then fighting them against one another. I think what he realized was that he wanted to fight the computer hardware against IBM and software against Microsoft. So he split his company into two companies, Claris and Apple Computers. So Claris actually went along a little bit, and Claris went and bought a company to compete with Access called FileMaker. Has everybody used FileMaker in this room? Nobody knows FileMaker? A few? That dates us all, I know. So another thing happened, which is somebody realized, hey, we could connect FileMaker with the web. We could make dynamic websites using a database. And there was a guy who went in it when he was a kid, decided he would write a language. He was actually sitting back there in front of that. His name is Kyle. And he wrote a language called Lasso, which would connect FileMaker to the internet, to the web. And Apple actually bought that language and incorporated it into Claris. It's called Claris Dynamic Markup Language. Fast forward a little bit, though, and Jobs went back to Apple. And when he went back to Apple, he killed off all of the products but hardware. But the language actually kept going. You can go to www.lassosoft.com, and there is a huge history and a huge community of server-side developers that we are a part of, which is interesting. But, of course, it's all server-side stuff, so it's very, very specific and has very, very specific uses. But Lasso got lost. Now, what's interesting about that is something changed, of course. The world started to turn into the mobile world. You guys are all here working on mobile devices. And we realized, what if we took the beauty of Swift and all of this long history of server-side development and merged them together, brought all of the great ideas, the technology, all of that experience of 15 years, and stuck it into Swift and rebuilt everything into Swift. So that actually is the vision behind Perfect. It was to marry the ideas of Lasso into Swift. So today we have a new product. We're literally a few weeks old. This is our first meetup, oddly enough. How exciting is that? Yay! Yeah. So that's how young we are. I mean, this is a brand new idea, a brand new product. It's called Perfect. And what it is it's a couple of things. One is it's a library of different things you can do server-side. These are things that Swift doesn't do out of the box. An example of that is cookie management, session management. If any of you have ever done web development, you know that you have to have these core functions, these core things, in order to do stuff, and Swift doesn't have them. So we have those libraries. In addition, we have a server, so that's the ability to take those libraries and kick them out. Now, two ways to do this. Most servers, if you're running a production server, you'll typically have PHP, Ruby on Rails, other things all running off a server, and they're connecting through and using Apache. So Apache is a gold standard of server software. So we built an Apache connector, so you can put it on a regular production server that's running other things. Alternatively, you can use any other server, or through FastCGI, or you can use the server that's built into Perfect. And of course, another neat thing to show you in a sec is we have a developer app. So if you want to develop, you can quickly spin something up, and you have an app right on your laptop that will help you develop with. And of course, data source connectors. So we have a number of different connectors in development at the moment, but we have at the moment MySQL, Postgres, and Mongo. This is a little picture of the developer app. So as you're working away in Xcode, you can run, say, Postgres and the developer app, and you can run your entire back end. So you can now write your backside, server side in Swift while you're building your mobile app. Just how that works, just to get sort of a conceptual idea, is on your developer operating system, you have all of your source files. You can compile something over onto your device, or you can compile it back onto the server. So what it looks like, and this looks different, of course, than the way you would write PHP, because it's statically typed, it's a compiled language. So you could put Apache, you don't need to have Apache, but you typically would. You're communicating back and forth using JSON or XML, whatever you want. Perfect sits in the middle. You then have your own files in the back, and you use mustache templates to depict what goes through to Perfect. The vision here, very simply, is we've got all of these different languages, and what we hope to see over the next coming years is that, of course, you would use Perfect and Swift on the back, and then, of course, Swift will hopefully take over the world. We'd like to see that, because then, of course, if you could use one language, building for everything from games and wearables across all of the platforms. Think Android. There's an Android compiler that came out last week for Android, which is great. So I think Swift has a huge future ahead of it. And we've actually bet the entire company, which has been Lassosoft, has been around for a long time, on the idea that Swift is a beautiful language and we should go that direction. So where we stand, that's my 5 minutes. We are looking for help. I mean, we are brand spanking new. You guys may know that last week another competitor came out, Katura, through IBM. There's been a bunch of others. There's Vapor, Taylor, a number of other things, but none of them have a team that's been working on server side for the last 15 years. Kyle's entire career has been working server side languages. So we have an amazing group of people behind us. And we want as much feedback as possible. I mean, this is a brand new idea, weeks old, literally. So if anybody says, hey, this is a good idea, well, why don't we have one of these? Why don't we have one of those? We have a whole bunch of other features because we wanted to get something out. I think yesterday we put out notification server. So if you want notifications from the server, you can have a central server and spit out notifications to your devices. As of yesterday, we have that. But anything else that we need, let us know, and we'll make sure. I mean, we want to make sure that we don't build too big of a thing to support. We want to keep it fairly lightweight. I read a great quote. The crossover of, of bloat and fully featured is a very, very fine line. In fact, it's probably not a line. So we want to make sure we don't make it too bloated of a product, but we want to make sure it's got all the features so that every time you want to run a server, you have all the tools ready to go when you need them. That's it. We also have some t-shirts to give out. If anyone's interested in writing a blog or doing something just to help get the word out, because really for us, this is open source. It's all written in Swift. It's based on the ideas of Lasso, but it has nothing left from Lasso. It is a brand new product moving forward. But we really want to make the best product possible, and we're putting all of our time and effort behind it. And then our vision is that in a few years, if this becomes a product that people like to use, then we'll probably offer a Perfect Plus or find other ways to generate revenue. At this point, this is literally just out of love for the community of iOS developers. So thank you very much.
Any questions?
Yes, sir.
So, how does this compare, say, to, is this a lightweight thing where we serve up to like Angular and consume the data coming to the web on Angular, or is this more of a solution along the line of old .NET web forms where there's components that we work with?
Kyle, do you want to answer that?
We have two models. You can do you were talking about certain Angular. Yeah, we could do that. We also have a mustache template For the most part, I see people using it for making RESTful APIs. Talking about devices primarily. But you can use it for that and for preparation with pages if it's good enough.
Hey, John.
Matt, first question. Yes, sir.
Is it a MVC, web MVC framework? I missed that.
The Mustache system is MVC based. So you register your controllers, we have routing, so you put in your URLs that support variables, wildcards, things like that.
Okay.
And you give it a class, and you associate the class with the view. And that's how the Mustache template works. The other system is the same, it's a URL routing, but then your class just gets a request object and a response object, and then you do whatever you want with that document.
I tried it, this perfect, and it's like it's running my domain name on AWS server, and it works perfectly very well. But what thing was missing there, it will be like when I was trying to set up it up with Apache, then there was like it couldn't set up very well. So there will be like logs. So if the error log can be more detailed, so that I can debug more, because when you are like connected with some remote server, you just like seeing the logs, and like you have to rebuild that area again and then install it again. So it's like very like much different experience than what you are using on Xcode and
Right.
Swift.
Right.
So if there will be like more detailed logs, it will be very good.
Thank you. Actually, logs is the next thing we were working on. So that is certainly, that is great. Thank you. Another thing we're also working on right now is an ORM, like an active record. And we actually have a prototype, but we haven't included it yet because it's not the best active record ORM out there. We wanted to put a lot of time and effort to make it the best, the most easy to use ORM we could possibly do. So that's coming imminently. Yes, sir.
Are you trying to be more a micro framework or something bigger, fully featured, like Rails or Django? Or like, what's your future ambition?
We want to take out Rails.
Like Rails. Okay.
Yes. The idea is eventually you wouldn't need Rails or PHP or any of the sort of classic frameworks or server-side languages. You would just use Perfect and Swift. Those would be the only tools you need. Yes, sir.
So for mobile developers who have no experience with back-end development or writing any kind of server-side code, what's the kind of ramp-up or steps that you would take to be able to write your own back-end in Swift? Because I'm assuming you just write the entire thing in Swift, so you can have, from top down, everything in Swift for like an application plus. So what would the ramp-up look like? What would we have to do to get there?
So we should talk afterwards, but very simply, you can download Perfect off GitHub, and then what you do is open up there's actually a walkthrough on GitHub, but once you spin up a server, so you're spinning it up locally, and instead of using Apache or configuring Apache, which is difficult, what you do is use the Perfect server, which is built in, and you will have a URL that you can access data from, and then you simply write things on the front and the back and connect them both. And then when you go into production, then you put it onto a server or something to that effect.
So that's what you're mostly going to do.
Exactly. And that gets a lot more complex, so you need to have a lot more knowledge there. We'll actually, our next steps are A, to work on more of the framework, and B, to make deployment super easy. Right now, deployment is probably the most difficult thing.
That's what my next question was.
Yes.
Yeah.
Deployment is very difficult right now. It's doable, obviously. We've done it many times, but there's no simple process. We designed one last week. We're just now talking to with a partnership with AWS and or Cloud Foundry, where you can just click the button and boom, your stuff now moves over. So for someone who's used to doing iOS development and you just want to get the stuff so that it works, we want to have a one button. It's going to be more than one button, but as few steps as possible to get it live.
Okay.
So right now it's a little bit more difficult to get into production. It's still possible.
It's very easy to do locally.
Very easy to do locally.
Okay.
So especially if you're thinking 2 or 3 months out, by 2 or 3 months out, we will have an easy deployment methodology. We're 6 weeks old. It's brand new product. I mean, it's a lot of history, but it's brand new product. Yes, sir.
Question is, how well does the build tooling and the overall system play with containerization? So, for example, for our development workflows, we have everything running on Docker, and that way keeps our development workflows close to production as possible. How well does this tooling that?
There was a third party that did a Docker setup with it. We haven't published anything. Like you said, we're still working on kind of the overall deployment Well, part of the nice thing is when you're developing a mobile app is that you can be debugging and developing the server and client Linux code at the same time. And that's really very nice because you can just step back and forth and then running at the same time debugging. So and of course that differs from the initial production environment, which is getting the
I asked because I'm actually a web developer. I'm one of those people who snuck in here.
Yeah, and we're actually, we are working on as well a CMS, so, and other things, so there's more and more on top of that. And as that happens, it'll be easier and easier to use. Again, right now it's a library of tools to enable that ability, but we could build web applications right now, but building websites, it's too young for that.
Maybe one more. Sorry. Yeah.
Sounds good?
There's like 3. Okay, who has their hand up right now? 1, 2. Okay, 3. That'll be it then, I guess.
Sure, yeah.
We'll just kind of move
we're
forward
way
a
over
bit.
time, yeah. Yes, sir.
This is probably more of a Carl question. How do you guys handle concurrency?
That's part of what we brought over from Lasso. We use, at the core, we use libevent for handling network processes. All of we include TCP networking classes which support SSL very well also, and they're all asynchronous. And I recall included the timeout. So some really nice wrappers that we've kind of been working on for quite a while over networking. As far as handling your request goes, you get a response object, and you can basically do anything you want while you have that response object. You can spin off into another thread, and store data out until you tell it that you're done. And at that point, it kind of finalizes the request and uses it again to split people out. So as far as concurrency goes, you don't do anything that blocks. You can't do anything that consumes the network processing loop. It was a pretty well.
One of the things we haven't done is have anyone do any rigorous throughput testing. So if anybody wants to really beat it with a stick, we'd love somebody to go beat it with a stick.
We benchmarked against Apache a bit, and we're a little bit slower. And that's just the web server spitting out static pages, essentially just the raw networking component.
That's for the server itself, though, not for the Swift itself.
Right, there were 2 more hands up, right? One, just going through systematically, and there, yeah.
Yes, sir.
Would it be a possible replacement for Parse.com?
For what, sorry?
Parse.com.
Absolutely. I think that Parse was very easy to deploy, and right now this is difficult to deploy. Once we sort out our deployment simplicity, then yes, this would be a place you could move instead of Parse, logically.
And one of the features
Not yet.
Sorry?
Not yet.
I would say not yet.
yeah, you'd be doing a lot of the back-end stuff yourself that Parse took care of. One thing we did just add, though, you mentioned notification support. I know a lot of people use Parse for push notifications. So we just finished building that and fixed some script.
And who was the last
There
one?
was one more hand.
I tried using the example and to make sure this API server is at the view of Protect. But even if this document is ready, so it gives me advice to make this API server with the Protect.
Advice on how to do that? Yeah, we'd be happy to talk to you about it. That's how we've been doing. We have 3 apps in progress right now that are nearing production, and we all use JSON for all the pipelines. We're glad to talk to you.
Thank you. Much appreciated.